episode of the Kings Pulse podcast presented by the Kings Herald. My name is Brenden Nunez, and today we have. Wow, I think this is the first time I've really butchered an intro, but there's no shot I'm doing a new one, so we're gonna roll with it.
Wow, yeah.
Also
300.
have Jrue
It took
here.
you 364 episodes to butcher an intro, so that's
Usually
actually
it's
really,
so
really
automatic, So when I thought about it, I was screwed. But we got Jrue here also. What's going on, local guy?
Oh, nothing. Beautiful day in Sacramento, and it is a Saturday, and there really wasn't much else to do other than go shopping. I actually went to the team store before I came home. I went to the team store, and there's a whole bunch of stuff on sale because they're clearing out a lot of the old inventories, specifically the jerseys. So those are at a very cheap price. If you want to go grab yourself a Fox, Sabonis, or Davion Mitchell, that's all they have. They don't have anybody else. And they got a ton of Fanatics brand shirts that are like $10 because the Kings are no longer a Fanatics owned team store. Everything goes back to them next year. Yeah. So Fanatics, as of July 1st, is no longer a Kings team store owner or operator or whatever. So a lot of the Fanatics team stuff is on sale right now. So store hours, I'm told, are 10 to 5, Monday through Saturday. So if you want to go down there and get yourself some cheap $10 shirts that are actually really, really nice, I would highly recommend it. So yeah.
I feel like the Davion jersey should come with a basketball.
I feel that way too. And by the way, Davion, I honestly loved the white jerseys from the Kings previous.
Same,
obviously, because that's something we got to talk about too, is the new jerseys, right?
Yes.
From the previous set, the crispy whites were my favorites personally. And Davion is the only one that has any white jerseys up in there. So if you want a Davion Mitchell white jersey from the previous Kings jersey set, go ahead and go get yourself one. They're either 45 or 65 bucks, something like that. So yeah, doing a lot of legwork here for the Kings team store. I kind of feel like I should get something out of it, but if not, it's totally fine.
That's the whole goal here, really. Let's be honest. I am out here in Vegas already for Summer League. Obviously, Kings played their first game yesterday. And let's start with Summer League stuff before we get into some of the other roster stuff, because I feel like if we start with the other stuff, we're not going to leave enough time for Summer League. Alex Figs is in the chat here, who had himself quite a moment yesterday.
There's no way that his phone is just not just ringing off the hook and buzzing off the hook. That guy it's been roughly 24, we're coming up on 24 hours since that whole thing happened, and just crazy. It must be a crazy whirlwind day for Alex, man.
And Alex is the one that made the shirt that Kevin Huerter was wearing. The Don't Bother Me, I'm Watching the Kings. He has 2 other shirts as well. What is it? DroughtIsOver.com? I think I have
Drought
that
is
right,
over.
Alex?
DroughtIsOver.com. Everybody click the link. He restocked because demand was so high after last night. So go get yourself one.
I do have a couple. Alex was nice enough, and they're super comfortable, I gotta say. But we're just plugging shit at the beginning of this one. We got anything else to plug? Arby's?
Arby's is going to be at the tail end of this. We always plug it.
Got you. Adding Alberto's, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But Alex was also nice enough to give me some of those shirts as well. And it's so funny. I had 3 shirts. I was like, well, I mean, I'm more than willing to, spread the love. So I gave my good friend Chris at Pocket Janitor on Twitter. I was like, here, pick one. And he picked the one that is now iconic. He picked the one that has now become the biggest sensation in all of Sacramento. So he got ahead of it. So shout out to Chris. But and
you know what? I have one here.
Yeah.
Keep going. I'm gonna find.
Yeah. Big shout out to Figs, man. He hit me up just before the Kings were about to clinch a playoff spot. And there it is. That's one of them. Drought is over. Yep. So I have that one and the other shirt. But I no longer have the one that has now become the hottest item in Sacramento. Figs hit me up and he said, "Hey man, I'd love for you to get in on this and just retweet the link when it goes live." I'm like, I got you. And the rollout was so perfect. He had a hype video and everything. And he tried to tell people back in April, get yourself one of these. Nobody listened. And now everybody wants one because Kevin Huerter wore one on national television. But shout out to Figs, man. He's been grinding with that, and now he's got a whole bunch. He's restocking. He's got a whole bunch more. He's about to get in the lab and make a whole bunch more of those shirts.
Agreed. They're pretty badass. They're comfortable. Yeah. I'm a fan. Yep. So good for Figs. The games. Yep. Let's talk Cal Classic first, and let's just start with the obvious. Keegan Murray's pretty good at basketball, man.
I think in you and I, along with our other good friends before that first game at the California Classic, talked about, yeah, maybe he just goes out there and plays a few minutes. You know, it's maybe just fan service for the home crowd here. Hopefully he doesn't do anything above a light jog. No, Keegan played heavy minutes that first night, scored 29 points, only grabbed 1 rebound, I would say is the only negative from that.
And coach mentioned that after. Like
right.
Keegan had a good game, and it actually was he was like, Keegan had 1 rebound at halftime, and I challenged him at halftime to get more rebounds, and he didn't get a single one in the second half. A little better in the next game.
Yeah, a little bit better next game. It's fantastic defensively the second game, but yeah, the first game, 29 points, and it was jarring. It was just like shocking to see some of the stuff that he was doing as a movement shooter, because what we're used to Keegan doing as a movement shooter is simply taking a DHO, coming off of a pin down, what they call zoom action, which is a pin down into a handoff, and just taking that with no dribbles and just shooting the ball. And he's fantastic at that. At 6'8", you should not be able to do that as a movement shooter. The stuff that he was doing that first night that was just like shocking to me was grabbing a dribble handoff off that same action, taking a dribble, and then off the dribble going into a movement 3. And it's just like, dude, Kevin Huerter has his signature off of a DHO is that little throw out dribble, gives him a couple extra feet of separation. If this is going to be Keegan's equivalent of that, good luck. Like if he's going to be hitting them at the clip that he was hitting them at the California Classic as well, I'm not quite sure how you're going to be able to stop that, especially if he layers on a better handle and is able to attack off the dribble. If anybody tries to lock and trail him very hard, it's not going to end very well for the defense if he's going to be able to, diversify what he can do off of a dribble handoff. And the stuff that we were seeing that first night was just incredible. Like I was like speechless watching some of it.
And it's also a mindset thing to me that I felt like we saw the growth. Like I agree with you for sure. All the on the court stuff, the off the dribble game is big. He only took about, I think it's like 1.1. It's barely over 1 pull-up shot per game last year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously the big area that he could display growth going into next year, and specifically try to get more comfortable with reps at Cal Classic. But I think you also have to be willing to like just mentally accept that level of aggressiveness of being a 1. And I don't know that everybody is necessarily able to do that. And Keegan totally embraced that. Like you look at the second game, Coach Luke Laux, who I think is like just as good as Mike Brown in media. Love Luke Laux.
He's awesome, man. Nicest guy.
Yes. That he said that prior to game 2, he told Keegan, this is the last game that you're going to play. This is actually the last game that you're going to play before your start of your next season.
Mm-hmm.
So go out there and pretty much kick some ass. And 41, 41. And like, this is the matchup was kind of talked about too. The Jaime Jaquez.
Yeah. Him and Jaime Jaquez. Yeah.
Because Jaquez was great the day prior, the same day that Keegan was. They felt like I was going to say the 2 best guys, but Julian Champagny might get mad at me for that one.
Right.
But he killed it, man. And the finishing at the rim for me last year was like, can you please dunk the ball all the time, right? The coaching staff talked about this too. I always mention this, but Monty McNair said when he drafted Keegan, one of his things was talking about his dunk percentage.
Mm-hmm.
And just the most efficient shot in basketball. Less than a minute into the California Classic, he threw it down over someone.
Yeah.
Like through someone, not late help or something. It was like
there was a guy there. Yep.
Yes. ridiculous.
Yep.
That and a little bit of, like you're saying, 1 or 2 dribbles, attacking closeouts or off DHOs. This is different. This is different.
Yeah. Funniest thing about that dunk that he threw down to start the game against Golden State was that it immediately forced the coaching staff of Golden State to call a timeout, which I thought was hilarious. Like we weren't even 60 seconds into the game, I think.
And thoughts on the stare down? Luke gave him a C-.
Yeah, I would give him roughly the same. He should have held it a little bit longer, but that's just not in Keegan's personality. That's definitely more a Chris Murray thing. Chris Murray had a few monster dunks this past season in college, and on one of them that I saw, he definitely stared a dude down and kind of like exulted. But that's just not Keegan. I'm sure maybe even his family was shocked that he even attempted one. So good for him, but I'd probably give him a C- there. Yeah, there really were no words left to describe what we witnessed. For him scoring 70 points over the course of 2 games, doing it in the manner in which he was doing it, and it wasn't purely off of those wide pin downs and that zoom action that we kept on seeing during the regular season. They ran a play where he initiated a set and it looked like a horn set, and he threw it to either Keita or it might have been Jake Stevens, and he immediately walked his man down into the key and then came off of a pin down from the key. So it was a gut zoom action, came back up, caught the ball, took 1 or 2 dribbles, sidestepped to 3, and he knocked it down. There was also one where he was in transition off of a rebound, just pulled up against the Miami Heat that second night and knocked down a 3 in transition. And it's just like, look, if he's going to be doing this, obviously we should expect a leap during the regular season. How big of one, I don't know, because the talent level in the G League, obviously. I mean, the G League, Summer League,
it's supposed to be a huge jump now. Like when your coach is sitting there, like I don't know that it should be expected, but like coach sat up there and said that a scout came up to him, one of their scouts, and was like, the only time I've seen a jump from year 1 to 2 like this was Kawhi. Mm-hmm. And again, very clear, like he's not saying he's Kawhi, but he's specifically talking about the jump from year 1 to 2. Because I was with you on that, but until I'm like hearing that, seeing what he did, it's like I think they're supposed and running it back essentially. Like that term maybe isn't exactly accurate with Duarte and Vezenkov, but essentially running it back might just be a bet on Keegan.
I would agree. I think, and this kind of mirrors what happened at the trade deadline, right? You know what you have in house, you trust what you have in house. And this isn't just with the players, but also with the coaching staff. And the coaching staff is outstanding. This is the deepest coaching staff I think the Kings have ever had. I mean, back when Rick Adelman was coaching staffs just were not that deep with behind the bench people. And from top to bottom, you have fantastic coaches. You have obviously considerably better player development than what you had before this coaching staff came in. Why wouldn't you bet on yourself? And to just assume that the Kings are going to go out there and get the 3 seed again, I think would be a little bit foolish. Anything can happen. I mean, the anything can happen kind of philosophy was kind of the reason why they got the 3rd seed last season. But you gotta think Monte McNair's thinking, look, I'm confident in what we have in the building, and I'm expecting huge growth from my 4th overall pick last year. And if that does indeed happen, then yeah. Why wouldn't you be confident in what you have? And you're right. They are essentially quote unquote running it back with, 2 additions, but I don't think, I kind of feel like running it back has had like a negative connotation within the fan base. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I think that if you really do trust what you have and that you trust that the additions that you are bringing in are going to be impactful, then why not try to run it back with essentially the same core, right?
I'm with you. And we'll get more to some of those other additions a little bit later, but to stick on Summer League before we move to that, let's do Colby Jones real quick. I think it's a pretty easy one. The last episode on here was Stone Hansen joining the show to talk about Colby. And if people want something with a little bit more depth and detail on him as a player, I think it's just been as advertised, which isn't a bad thing at all. He does a little bit of everything. He's versatile. There's been times where they're running him at the point. There's times they're running him at the 2. And then he stepped into that spot at the 3 when Keegan went out and started for the team yesterday. So it's a little bit of everything. It's rebounding. There's passing. He shot the ball not great in game one, but has been fine since. I still think there's, the same thing that I thought prior, that the jumper looks really good off the catch and off the dribble, not so much. He did, miss some free throws yesterday. That is something that also was a little bit of a concern or question mark coming out of college. But I mean, is there anything like that surprised you with Kobe, or anything that's notable that, has made you thought about his role, how he's viewed at Sacramento, anything like that?
No, nothing that's really surprised me, because he was one of the guys that and admittedly this past season with the Kings being good, I didn't watch as much college basketball as I would have liked, but he was certainly a prospect that was on my radar during the season. And big shout out to Bryant West. Bryant West, also a big Colby Jones fan. So he's extremely happy that the Kings got him at 34. I think it's same as advertised. He comes in, he's steady, such a smart player. There were some moments too where he was, diving on loose balls and, making effort plays, that kind of stuff. I guess we probably could have just assumed that was in his DNA, because the guy just plays hard. But yeah, I wonder if they will give him more time at the point, simply because that's something that I'm curious about him doing at this level. As a wing in college, he averaged 4.4 assists per game. I'm sure Stone Hansen probably talked about this, but 4.5 assists per game for a not point guard in college is very, very impressive, given the talent level and who he's passing the ball to. Because if you're above 5 for a point guard, that's pretty good in college. So to get near that number as a wing, really good. And I think that was the most intriguing thing about him, specifically when we're talking about this team, is as a third, connector, as potentially a secondary or tertiary playmaker. Like, how is he going to look out there with Fox and Sabonis? And you can count on him to just always make the right basketball play. I think that's basically what we've seen from him. In transition, especially, I haven't seen him really make a bad decision yet. He's either hitting a guy wide open on the wings, or he's kind of surveying the floor. Then he'll put his head down and he'll attack, depending on how the defense, plays out in front of him. Everything about him has been as advertised. And he's been the other thing that I was curious with him about was how he's going to get to his floater. That thing's like almost automatic if he can get to it. It's looked pretty good. And I got to shout out my guy Cash Iggy on Twitter, who's been tweeting a lot of Colby Jones clips, and he's been keeping an eye out on the floater. He's been wondering the same thing. Looks pretty good so far, and if that's the one thing that he can rely on with his game during his rookie season, that might help him find some more minutes on the floor, because you can't just have a guy out there simply, just to defend. We saw that with the whole KZ Okpala thing, right? You gotta be a threat on offense. If he's able to get to that shot, he'll be able to contribute on offense. And I think it bodes well that, that he'll probably make the roster, and, he's not going to play every night, but he'll get minutes. He'll get minutes at some points during the season.
I am with you. And I don't think that he is, PJ Dozier got waived today. I don't think that it's I'm kind of with you. I'm kind of with you.
Kind of sucks. Yeah.
It doesn't really matter that much, to be honest, but I'm kind of with you. I do like PJ.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the third string point guard is Colby Jones. I think that he can play that role. I think that you do kind of have 3 point guards if you want to call Malik one. And that maybe, like Kobe can defend points, and then Malik is just initiating the offense. Or maybe you still need to go get a third string point guard. There's 2 spots still available on this roster now, with PJ not being guaranteed. And Jordan Ford feels like a pretty obvious option here. As a fellow St. Mary's guy, I want to rant about how damn good Jordan Ford has been. And also, can we talk about it wasn't always this level. Like this is a jump. He was really freaking good in Stockton last year.
Yep.
But this is a little bit of a jump again.
Yes, I was always curious with him. I think he did play overseas for a spell, and I always kind of thought that was going to be that was going to be what Jordan Ford did. Was he was going to make a lot of money playing overseas. You would think that he was betting on himself and had faith in himself that he could prove that he was going to play at the NBA level by showcasing himself in the G League because he decided to stick around. Yes, this is a jump. This is he's funky around the basket, which makes him just an above average finisher around the rim. He's just so quick and so shifty, and the 3-point shot is there as well. And you know that he can run the offense. They ran the same offense in Stockton as they did in Sacramento. And if you're looking at the offense this summer, it's the same thing. They're running the same sets essentially, maybe slightly stripped down, if anything. And he's able to operate out there. Very, very good in pick and roll. He's just so steady. Last night on the broadcast, Rick Kamla and Channing Frye, they said that Jordan Ford is very much a St. Mary's player. And what they mean by that is Randy Bennett, the St. Mary's coach, runs the most rigid, slow-paced offense in all of college basketball. They are always bottom 10 in pace. But what that means is your point guard has to be under control. He has to be able to manipulate kind of the pace of the game. And he's never going to make bad decisions because he's always going to be running his offense, which is very pick and roll heavy. And it's just very, very methodical and slow. Those are all characteristics and traits that you would want out of your point guard. And especially out of a backup point guard, right? Because if you're going to put him in the game, you're not expecting him to score 20 points, but you're expecting him to go out there and give you some continuity and not really muck anything up offensively. And I think he's an obvious candidate, definitely for that third 2A spot and maybe even potentially a roster spot. But obviously we're going to see how that shakes out with the rest of this offseason. They only have 13 players rostered right now, so we'll see.
A roster spot does feel like a little much for me, and I love Jordan Ford.
Mm-hmm.
I think that 2-way, we just haven't seen, it's just not having seen it in the NBA. And maybe I shouldn't have that hesitation, but I definitely do. A lot of it is just his size, and he knows that. He talked about it in post-game yesterday, like he's trying to be a better defender, and just reality is a lot of guys are going to be bigger, so he has to be very physical, get into the ball, and that he's trying to be better there. And I think you're seeing a little bit of that. And offensively, that's all there. He's smart. He orchestrates. He can shoot the crap out of the ball.
Yes.
I think he shot 40% for 3 years in a row in the G League from beyond the arc. He can do everything. The finish that he had in transition after he dug in, got the steal, and then that reverse, that was I was like, where the hell did that come from? He's really good. And I think I would be comfortable with him being the third string point guard as a 2-way in my mind. I mean, I don't hate your roster spot idea. I just would be surprised.
Sure.
I don't know, a guy I don't know why this is the name that always comes to my mind, but I don't know exactly everybody that's still available, but Raul Neto, a guy that has done it. I would understand preferring him. But I think there's an argument for Ford as well. He's intriguing. I'll also say Keon Ellis being talked about as a back point guard, third string point guard, drives me insane because, listen, I love Keon. People know that, obviously.
Hey, be careful. Hey, we're like best buds now. So
listen,
whatever you say,
listen,
I will.
Listen. We both know we get nervous when that guy dribbles the ball. That guy he got better last year. But his assist to turnover ratio in college was about even. And he's just not, that's not who he is. He's not a point guard. He's not an initiator. He's a connector. He got better as a passer last year.
Definitely.
For sure. But it's also from a very low starting point, So I like Keon. I'm interested. He's back on a 2-way. I think that he's been solid during this time. Nothing really new, I'll say, but I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think that finding his ways to impact the game on the offensive end is still sort of a process here, and that's fine and to be expected. But he's certainly not your third string point guard either. What have you kind of seen from anything new to you from Keon? Except for this hair color?
Yeah. Yeah, which you asked him about, right? And he said
I guess
it,
gray. He said that
yeah.
we were going for gray, and it turned sort of blondish.
Yeah. So to your point about his improved playmaking and improved handle, it is nice to see him, because he and Ford have been starting games together. And so there you go. There's you get Ford obviously is going to be your lead guard, and then you have Keon out there as a secondary initiator. And he's been pretty good at that. He's been very, very good at directing traffic out there. When things get kind of messed up, like spacing wise, he'll tell guys where to go. He'll demand ball screens to be set for him. He's both been the screener and the ball handler in those double drag screens that we see the Kings run a lot. He just, the IQ and just the understanding of the offense out there for him has taken a leap. That's gotten a lot better, and generally just making the right play. I really do think that the simple play for him out there is always going to be just a good thing to just default to, simply because that's probably what Monty wants to see. Is he's not going to be a guy out there that they're going to expect too much out of offensively. Let's say if he does make the main roster, right? He's going to be out there for his defense, and the defense has been pretty good outside of the fact that at the California Classic, I kind of feel like he's got an arch nemesis ref who just calls everything on him.
He did get some whistles, and he is very animated in his like there's no way I just fouled that guy.
Yeah, no, literally.
Yes,
and it was wild because
he picked up head.
Yeah, he picked up his 6th personal foul like halfway through the 3rd quarter of the first game at the California Classic. For those who don't know, you get 10 in summer league. That's always been that's a rule all the way down to high school. I've only ever seen 2 people foul out of a summer league game at any level. One, my backup point guard going into my senior year, he got pissed at a dude and was just hacking him. My coach just let him do it. I don't know why. And then DeMarcus Cousins actually in a summer league game one time committed 10 fouls and got fouled out. So yeah, Keon, with every subsequent foul that he would pick up, I would just yell from the crowd and be like, "Hey man, you got X amount more, man, use them." And I talked to him after the first game, and he was like, "Yeah, I don't even know what was going on there. Like I got elbowed in the face one time and got a foul called on me, and there was one play where he got a back tip and was about to grab a steal. They called a foul on him, and he asked the ref." Where was the foul? And I think the ref straight up he said the ref told him, "Oh, I don't know. I didn't get a good look at it." And so he was like, "Okay, well, if you didn't get a good look at it, then why'd you call a foul?" Right. But he was much better at that.
Summer league refs too.
Exactly. Yeah. I think these are G League level refs that are, out there for the experience. He got a lot better with that the second game, or was headed, trending in the right direction the second game with that, just less handsy, less foul calls. And then last night only committed 2 fouls, and his activity level on defense was great. He had 4 steals last night. So he was all over the place. So yeah, look, the defense is about as advertised. He's been just really, really good on that end. And if that's his way to making it to a main roster, great. I think he's aware of that. I think we're all aware of that as well. That's probably going to be the case if he does get rostered. But obviously he's back on a 2-way for a reason. You would think that Monte McNair acknowledges that, yes, there's work to be done there with his game, but also he's making strides to where the Kings do want to keep him around. And so I think it's a positive sign that he's back on a 2-way. And I think his play has been quite positive this summer up to this point as well.
So do I. We got dude in the chat here. Great name. Asking Jrue, how was it to see your good friend Deli, quote unquote good friend, with the team in Vegas? And I guess I'll let you answer that question first.
I mean,
makes you tingle or what?
Dude, of course. I mean, you got a St. Mary's guy on the team who was essentially Deli's successor, because there were a couple point guards in between Deli and Ford at St. Mary's, but they aren't like program legends the way that Deli and Ford are, right? So basically you're talking about his successor on the team. Deli on the team last year, now obviously going back to Australia and playing in the Australian Basketball League next season because he wants more playing time. Totally understandable. Just great to see that he's still around the team. I think we've spoken to a lot of people who would probably echo this sentiment. Last year's team was so much fun. The vibes were fantastic, and they're going to be an unforgettable team for the rest of eternity when it comes to Kings fandom, because that was the team that ended the drought. That was the team that turned it around. And Deli was a huge part of that. So to see that he's still good buddies with the guys on the team, still out there supporting guys that, I mean, he probably doesn't know anybody else on that roster out there other than Keon, Nemi, Jordan Ford, and maybe some G League guys. The fact that he's there watching these dudes play not high quality basketball in Vegas, what does that tell you? He's just a good guy, great teammate, definitely comes from a great family, and just want to wish him the best of luck next year in the Australian Basketball League. He wants that Olympic roster spot. Totally get why he made that move, but definitely bummed that he won't be back in Sacramento next season.
I've seen people float the idea a lot. And also that I think there was some post game last year that I believe it was Coach Brown, or maybe it was a player, said that he would make a great coach. And everybody's like, oh shit, he's going to join the coaching staff.
Yeah.
I don't get the impression that that's happening, at least like now. But him being around does say a lot about like the culture that the Kings had last year. And Chima Moneke was there too.
Right.
And again, that's the same thing. Like if you're going there to be around these guys, then that says a lot about the experience that you had while you were there. And Chima's in there watching this Kings game when Wemby and Brandon Miller are playing right next door. Same with Delly and all these other guys. And I brought the question up so we could get to like just everybody. A lot of people were there. Keegan Murray, obviously there. Davion Mitchell, who has a basketball glued to his hand. It's ridiculous. He really has a basketball everywhere. Yep. It's really funny. Like at the Cal Classic, I saw him leave at halftime at one of those games and then came back. And I was like, I guarantee that man just went to get shots up in the practice facility. But he always has a basketball with him. Davion, Keegan, Kevin with Figs' shirt. We had Trey Lyles, which I love seeing Trey Lyles there. He just re-signed to a 2-year, $16 million deal. But I love seeing Trey Lyles because in his exit interview, he talked about how he doesn't really hang out. He didn't really hang out with teammates at previous stops because he didn't want to just build a relationship just for it to be gone when he moved to a new team. I think it was like something like 3 teams in 5 years, 4 teams, 5 years, something like that. But that he allowed himself to sort of break out of that this past season. And this is another example of that. Like, I think that I loved seeing Trey Lyles there. I feel like there's others I'm missing. Thank you. Yes. Sasha. We just got to talk to Krista Duarte today, so he'll be here from here on out. There's a lot of guys here and a crazy amount of the coaching staff. Obviously, front office members as well. So everybody's out here supporting. There is certainly a continuity. Their slogan going into next year is connected. That's what you're gonna see on the shirts. In the O instead of like a hollow circle is a crown, right? So
are you sure the O is not going to be a 0?
It depends if their phone is working properly or not. So we can figure it out. But they certainly do have a connectiveness, and again, to tie it back to Summer League, like Coach Laux, that is, keeps talking about physicality being so important, but he doesn't always, it's always talked about is that's so important for us, meaning the Sacramento team next year, the regular season team next year, to have an improved physicality on both ends of the floor. And they're like, that starts right now. Like Kessler Edwards, who I guess we haven't talked about yet, is the only guy out there as of right now that is like guaranteed to be on the Sacramento roster next season outside of the 2-ways, right? But they're like, this is who we are. If it says Kings on the jersey, we're playing this type of basketball. And there is absolutely a connectivity that these guys clearly all get along with each other. I think a handful of them went golfing this morning, for example. Like these guys very much get along with each other. I think that's great to see. Let's talk about Nemi a little bit.
Sure.
He's an interesting one to me. Where, okay, let's start with the 2-way situation. I guess he's not under a contract as of right now, right? He there is that one final 2-way spot left, and in my mind, if they wanted him on the main roster, he'd already be on the main roster. I'm sure Nimi would prefer that. But I think that a two-way still makes a lot of sense. When Nimi got asked about it post-game yesterday, just do you think, I think the wording was something along the lines of like, do you think it'd be beneficial for you to have another two-way? And he had a great response. I don't think I posted it, but I could. Somebody definitely did. And he said, it's all about perspective. And like, I'm going to do what I'm asked. And he doesn't seem like one to complain at all, but he thinks he's ready. I'm not sure, like genuinely not sure, because that fourth quarter he had was amazing. Coach Laux joked he never thought he would be calling post-ups for Nimi. And that's not a slight on Nimi, but like that's not in the game plan, right? And then that's what's happening in that fourth quarter. And he's great, man. He has these he does have good touch around the rim with both hands. He's using his left a lot throughout this one Vegas game and then California Classic this year. He's got good footwork, touch with both hands. It's just so inconsistent, man. Like I joked with whoever I was sitting with yesterday, like, can you imagine if you because I saw Sam Vecini in a corner, right? And I think Vecini's one of the best draft guys. He's some of my favorite draft content.
For me, he's number one on my draft guys.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
But I was like, imagine if Vecini just walked in right before the start of the fourth quarter, like, or anybody for that case, right? Like, you'd be like, holy shit, who is this guy? But that's the Nimi experience to me, is that you have these moments of, whoa, that was something. And then a lot of other moments where you just don't really feel him when he's out there.
Yeah.
And that's why I got kind of not agitated, but I don't love the whole G League MVP runner-up, because that's factual, but I do think it is a little misleading. He wasn't dominating every single game. He can dominate, but there's other games where he's just, you don't feel him at all. And when you're especially that physical build, like they should be feeling you every single game. And I don't know how to those are all the pieces to this, but I don't know how to fully come to a conclusion on how I feel, because these are just flashes we're talking about, and bigs take a long time to develop. But how long do you give? He only has 1 year left of G League or 2A eligibility, so I guess that answers that question for you. But what's your thoughts on his where he's currently at and contract situation?
Yeah, and an alternate reality where a two-way contract doesn't exist and that's not an option, I'm really curious. Like, would Demias Queta even be around anymore, right? Like, you got to wonder, because in the same vein that Keon Ellis is back on a two-way, I think Nimi's still around the team and got a second two-way last year because the Kings see something, and that there's something in there that they want to see growth from him with, and they want to see improvements with. And yeah, the flashes are just like, when they do happen and when you do see them, it's so much fun. They're incredible. Obviously, the big thing that I think a lot of people think that he could bring to the team is rim protection. He's 7 feet tall, right? And that's kind of what he was known for. He was, one of the, I think, country's leaders in blocks. He was either second or he might have been first his last season at Utah State. And that was the obvious, tantalizing kind of trait and ability or skill about him that made him a second round pick. And he still shows that. You're going to see that at least a few times a game. Agitated would not be the word that I would use as well, but I do get a little, I don't want to say disappointed either, but when he's out there, he can do some great stuff, and the great stuff is really, really great. But then sometimes he just kind of from a movement perspective, you're like, man, this guy does look like he's laboring to get up and down the floor. He's not very quick off of 2 feet, when he jumps. And I don't know, he just seems like when he has the ball in his hands, it's almost like he's stuck in molasses sometimes when he's trying to put the ball on the floor and make a move. And I think the movement thing to me is the biggest hindrance here, because if he was just better laterally, and if he was just quicker off of 2 feet getting off the ground, I don't think we're talking about him as a two-way guy anymore. He might have just been upgraded to a standard contract last year, but obviously there's something there that's holding him back. I think that's probably it. The playmaking and all that stuff, the scoring, the finishing around the rim, the improved left hand, like you mentioned. I mean, that stuff we've all seen before. Utah State, Kings legend Sam Merrill was the guy.
Current Cavalier, apparently.
Oh, wow. Had no idea. In 2019, 2020, the year that the tournament didn't happen because everything got shut down because of COVID, Sam Merrill was the guy for them, like at Utah State. He was phenomenal. Very, very good player. With him being gone the next season, Utah State was like, look, we have to find another person that we can run our offense through. They settled on Nimi because Nimi was good enough at the college level to do that. And he actually was pretty serviceable running stuff out of the high post. Having the offense run through him, even on the low block, he would look for shooters opposite and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't a bad idea, but would that translate? Yeah, we'd see. We see flashes of it. And we saw a ton of it down the stretch against the Hawks on Friday night. Funny how the Hawks wanted to throw Brady Manick out there and go small, and he just stopped making shots. And then on the other end, he was getting absolutely abused by Nimi, and that's what led to the Kings winning the game. So he's such an intriguing player. He brings so much to the table. The flashes are there. There are a lot of people who are Team Nimi. The entire country of Portugal is Team Nimi.
Mm-hmm.
I just
My last name is Portuguese. I don't mean to talk bad.
Okay, all right. So you obviously have a
extreme
dog
bias,
in this, right? Yeah, you have.
Yeah. Like every good journalist,
right? Yep. Totally biased, and takes things personal. That kind of thing. That's what makes a good journalist these days. Yeah. Look, he's shown a good amount through the first 3 games of Summer League. I'm just not quite sure with him, with there being 1 2-way contract left. I don't know if he gets that. And then if it comes down to him maybe getting a roster spot, I don't know if he gets that. So I don't, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Yeah. It will be a dogfight for that last 2-way for sure. I mean,
yes.
It's probably between him and Ford in-house. And then who knows, there could be a guy out there that, maybe Monte McNair comes across and offers them a 2-way contract. So we'll see.
If he, if he says, I don't want a 2-way, I'm only going to be there if I get a fully guaranteed contract. I'm not in the spot where I am thinking that like you are going to regret it if you let him walk. I don't know. I would love to have him on a 2-way, but if it came down to that, like maybe this guy signed in the last couple of days and I missed it and don't remember this, but like I love like a Gorgie Dang, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's other guys that I would probably look at using a roster spot on than Nimi. And I think the opportunity cost of what that name could be instead of Nimi, I would lean towards more doing that than, fully the only way you can keep him is a roster spot. And I don't know if that's true. I'm just laying out a hypothetical that I think is very possible. Is there any other, like there's Jalen Slauson. Honestly, every time, like he was really bad in the Cal Classic, to be honest. I think that he's very much getting used to a role. He did play like 4 and 5 at Furman in a very similar scheme, 5-out offense, a lot of DHOs, ball player movement. But I do think there's an adjustment to like being a full-time 4.
Yeah.
And whenever somebody asks about him, I'm like, guys, we're talking about the 54th pick here.
Yeah.
Like, let's just be real about expectations. I think Slauson's very interesting defender. I've really liked his confidence from 3. He's very willing to pull it, and I think the shot for him looks pretty solid. There's interesting playmaking. And yesterday in Vegas, he had 2 really good blocks, like weak side blocks coming over and protecting the rim. And for what it's worth, the coaching staff, but Luke Laux is the one that I've like heard be most straightforward about it. Could care less about blocks.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about like verticalities.
Yep.
And Slauson is really good at that.
Yep.
So that there's aspects, but like, I don't know. I kind of glossed over Slauson in this because to me, like, this is normal 54th pick stuff we're talking about, guys. This is going to be a process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do you have any other like thoughts on Slauson?
Yeah, some people were very, very high on him pre-draft. There were some people giving him like late first round grades, early second. So to get him at 54th, I think compared to the consensus, that's a coup. That's good. But look, again, he played at Furman. That's the SoCon. That's the Southern Conference. You know, the level of competition there, not the highest in college basketball. However,
you're straight up disrespecting Jake Stevens right now.
Shout out to Jake Stevens, man, Chattanooga legend, rostered on this summer league team, and hopefully he makes an impact too. Got an Exhibit 10,
He did.
So very likely that he ends up with the G League
much,
team.
But yeah,
not playing very much, but maybe there's a reason for that, right? Maybe they're,
I like that theory.
But the Southern Conference, good mid-major conference, not the best competition in college basketball. He did look great against Virginia in the NCAA tournament when they won that game, though, and upset them as a 13 seed.
Which, by the way, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you again, but you know the play, obviously, where the Virginia guy just chucked it, right?
Yeah, Kihei Clark. Yeah,
that's okay. Infamous name. That's a great one. I didn't realize. You remember the video after where a Furman player is walking into their locker room and you just hear him saying like he just threw it up there. Like, what was he doing? I didn't realize that was Slauson.
That was Slauson. Yeah.
Yes. It was so funny. I just realized this the other day.
Yeah, that clip went viral, and that was I just can't believe it from the perspective of this is Kihei Clark, 2019 national champion with Kings legend Kyle Guy, and was like he was in his sixth year in college. Like, how do you make that mistake as a veteran player? Just a crazy game, though. They showed that on the Jumbotron at Golden One because I was there for March Madness, and so they put that game up. And when that shot went in, that place absolutely lost it. Yeah, that is regular 54th pick stuff. He's gonna have to work through some things. He's gonna have to find his footing. He's gonna have to find what works for him. And if it means being a better defender, trying to find his way defensively, and that's how he's going to get on the floor, fine. If they like the lineup versatility that he's able to give them, and he can come in and play small ball 5 in a pinch, that was probably when he looked his best. When you say was when he played small ball 5, I think that's where the blocks came from.
It didn't happen long, but yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. Furman, 5 out, DHO heavy, tons of player movement. Lots of read and react stuff. Very, very similar stuff to what the Kings run. I mean, there's a reason why Monte McNair was intrigued by this guy, that he felt like he could have just, made the pick and let him develop. I mean, we thought Monte McNair coming into this year's draft was allergic to second round picks, that he just didn't want to make them. But, here we are. And by the way, last year, a lot of people thought this sounded ridiculous. They were like, Monte McNair is trading second rounders for more second rounders, and he swears that's adding additional assets that's going to be used for something. Well, those second rounders that he did add, after trading away Jaden Hardy, and I think he traded away another second round pick last year, turned into Chris Duarte. So there you go.
It was their own 2030, and then a Dallas second.
A Mavs 2028 pick,
which would be the Jaden Hardy, right?
Yep, that was the Jaden Hardy pick. Yep.
Right.
So yeah, we'll see with Slauson, but he's definitely an intriguing prospect, and definitely looking forward to see if he can make any strides during this summer league. But also he's going to be in Stockton next season, so it'll be cool to track him and monitor his improvement.
Agreed. If anybody in the chat has any questions about summer league related stuff before we spend a little bit of time, I know we ran long, but I guess we always run long. I always do this. I'm really going just being on these Kings beats is really rubbing off on me here. But if anybody else has any summer league questions, now would be the time to get them in.
B West in the chat says Jordan Ford season, all caps, man. Big shout out to Brian West.
I feel like indirectly a Gales fan. It just rubs off on me with you two.
You say that until we force you to watch a Gales game, and you're not as invested as we are, and you're just like, what is this? The score is 54-50 with 2 minutes left in the game.
I mean, yeah, these summer league games can be pretty freaking tough too.
Yeah.
A lot of people I'm a sicko, man. I'm like why are we not going today? I might not make it there today. And I'm
Yeah.
like, why? Like, it bothers me actually. I like noticed what Detroit's roster was from a restaurant where I was eating. And I was like, damn it. Why am I not watching Jalen Duren and James Wiseman right now? Their lineup's crazy, by the way, with Asar Thompson and Jaden Ivey, who didn't score
Dude.
41 points for what it's worth.
Yeah. Bummer.
Yeah. But I will also throw out, did you catch the Portland and Houston game from yesterday? That was like one of the most best games that was one of the best games I've ever seen.
So I did not, because I was in the gym doing my 74th consecutive chest workout. But I was seeing the reactions. I was looking at my phone on Twitter and on the new social media app presented by Meta, Threads. People were talking about that game, and there was so much happening. I saw you just straight up tweeted, "What is happening in this game?" Like, you had no idea.
Everybody was trying to dunk on everybody.
Yeah.
The athleticism was not okay. Like Scoot and Shaden Sharp, and you have Keon Johnson, by the way, who broke the record for a verticality at the combine 2 years ago. There's Greg Brown III, who's a crazy athlete,
insane athlete.
And then on the other side with Houston, you got Amen Thompson, Cam Whitmore, who I think I saw hit his forehead on the rim. It was ridiculous. I might have said Cam Johnson. I meant Cam Whitmore.
Yeah. No, you said Cam Whitmore.
Okay, cool. Yeah. But yeah, that game was a great time. And it somehow made the game after, that was the Wembanyama game, that the stadium was packed for. Like, kind of made it a little disappointing to me. I was like, I don't know if I'm just coming off a high or what, but like, this one isn't hitting the same.
Yeah. I can't imagine what that'd feel like actually being in the building for that, because obviously, Jabari Smith, game winner. By the way, that was the other.
Oh, yes, that's what it ended with.
That was the other big thing that people were talking about on the timeline in the first half. People were saying Jabari Smith is a bust. He's like the worst. Like, I can't believe. Oh, I'm so glad that
I'm not gonna lie. I had a little of like, what the hell's going on right now? Like, this guy's not doing good.
Right, and I have a ton of Thunder mutuals because Thunder fans are just the best. They're so cool. And so many of them were just like, oh, thank God Sam Presti, man, absolute genius, took Chet over Jabari Smith, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, then he just goes off in the second half. Just absolutely goes off. Tari Eason was also out there as well, another player that I absolutely love, who's just a dog. And those guys were just, that game just seemed like a scrum. Like, it was just crazy. Like you said, everybody trying to dunk on each other, just guys flying everywhere. Ends in a Jabari Smith game winner. I think he finished with 33 points after scoring 4 points in the first half or something like that. I mean, that had to have been one of the greatest summer league games ever. I would say almost as good as the Murray Miracle game. But obviously, it just depends on who you ask. Yeah.
The call, I mean, it's still my intro, part of my intro for this pod, the Murray Miracle in Vegas or whatever it is from Mark Jones. That makes it great. And I haven't heard the Jabari call, but Chris Watkins sent a text to me after and was like, Jabari just had his Keegan Murray
moment. Yep.
And it's really funny because Chris also joked after last year that Keegan just had his Marvin Bagley moment. And
oh no,
I was like, wait, so why is this now a good thing? Where did this come from? Anyways, let's do a little Chris Duarte, I guess. We just talked to him today for the first time. English is definitely his second language. And Domas actually speaks Spanish to him on the floor, which is something that I think is pretty helpful for him. Because there are still things you can interact with him just fine, but there's small things. Like, for example, we were talking to him about some baseball stuff because he's for the Dominican Republic and kind of grew up around baseball a lot, right?
Yeah.
About like how you would hit a bottle cap, and this would be like, sort of younger. This things you do when you're like trying to get a kid better at baseball, right?
Yeah.
But we had to like describe what a bottle cap is. So there is like still some language stuff, right? And I think that even just the basic aspect of speaking Spanish, his native language, is probably a big comfort for Chris, I'd imagine, especially when he first gets drafted. And like, it was talked about a lot when he first got drafted or first got traded here, that it has to do with his relationship with Domas. Like that's a big aspect here, but you could really tell how much he likes Domas. He's talking about like Domas's family, and hanging out with them. And Megan in the chat has a good point. She says Jordy can swear at them in Spanish. And
that is true.
Is a great point. But yeah, I mean, I think that he's intriguing. Another standout thing to me from the presser is when he got asked, what do you bring to Sacramento? His very first thing was, I'm a shooter. And he didn't shoot very well last year. Even the year prior, his numbers were better, but it wasn't like, a crazy.
Yeah, it was a shade under 37% when he was a rookie. Yeah.
And but I think it's notable he starts with that, and he, you know, then mentions that he does a little bit of everything, playing off of Domas, and things like that. But there's defense there as well. He was kind of touted as a guy that would play both sides of the ball when he was coming out of Oregon. And it's intriguing. What it comes down to for me with Duarte is that there's no risk. Maybe I shouldn't say no risk. You're 20, 30. Maybe they're back to being the Kangs. By the way, I do have one drink here that I've been slowly drinking. I had tried to think of another word, but drinking throughout the course of this episode. That was from the Kangs bar, apparently downstairs. I was like, what the hell is this name? It's the most expensive drink I've ever had in my life, and it's basic as hell. What was I? Damn it.
Duarte.
Yes, that there's, maybe you're back to being the Kangs. That's where that came from.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're back to being the Kangs by 2030 and you're giving up the 32nd pick.
Right.
So there's no risk involved, but that's the worst case, is that you're giving up 2 number 32 picks, like way down the line. He's better than Terrence Davis, which, by the way, I'm surprised Terrence Davis doesn't have a team yet, but he's better than Terrence Davis. And you're not relying on Duarte. Somebody earlier in the chat was asking about how many guards are on this team. There's a lot. If Duarte doesn't work out, it's fine. Like, you have other options. But if he does, then, you know, maybe we're talking about smaller lineups, Kevin playing the 3, Duarte playing the 3.
Yeah.
What it comes down to for me is there's no risk here, really.
Yeah. The synergy with Domas, I am so ready to see that, because that was the first thing that not only Kings people pointed out, but Indiana media people. Shout out to Caitlin Cooper, who does outstanding work covering the Pacers and just the NBA at large. She immediately posted clips of Domas and Duarte's like 2-man game. And this isn't just strictly off of DHOs. When Domas did have the rare opportunities in Indiana to just grab a board and go and dribble out in the open court, he was always looking for Chris. And she posted a clip of him whipping a cross-court pass from the right wing over to Duarte in the corner, and he knocked that down. That was during his rookie season. And I think the point in the season where Duarte's production really started falling off was the trade deadline in 2022, because Domas left. There was no more Domas to really feed him looks, and that's both as a cutter and out on the perimeter as well. I think Chris Duarte is a better shooter than the 37% that he shot as a rookie. I really do. His first game ever in the NBA as a pro against the Charlotte Hornets, he went off. I don't know how many points he had, but I think he hit 6 threes. And I kind of think that number took a hit towards the end of the season because he just wasn't fully healthy. And then also the offense it was just completely different. He wasn't running the same offense anymore. Barely got any court time with Tyrese even, because he just wasn't out on the floor as much towards the end of the season. And then this past season, just an injury-riddled season. Never really got his footing. And
he mentioned that he came back a little early from, I think it's a left ankle injury. He mentioned he came back a little early trying to help the team, and I'd imagine he won't make that same mistake twice,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just knowing your body. Yeah, obviously, like he's learned his lesson now. He probably won't try to brush himself back from injury. Uh, and and I think as long as he's healthy enough to give you 70 some odd games, that's another option that you have on the bench if you're Mike Brown. Frankie, our good friend Frankie Cardicelli, did tweet out the depth chart the other day and said he's so excited about the options that Mike Brown is going to have. And this is essentially, again, with the same team that's coming back, the same core that's coming back. It's just the addition of Duarte gives you so much more lineup versatility, you know, to swing 2-3. And then, of course, you have Sasha Vezenkov, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second. He can play 4-5. So, yeah, look, in the same way that Kevin Huerter is just a movement maestro and is always playing that two-man game with Domas, whether that's as a shooter or taking a DHO and going downhill with it, Duarte can be the same. And I'm really, really excited to see him out there. If Duarte and Huerter and Domas ever share the court at the same time, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibilities, that could be a nightmare for defenses. Like, how do you account for those two guys just constantly moving and cutting off of Domas, who is so good operating from the high post?
And imagine it's with Keegan too.
There you go. And then Fox is your fifth guy, right? You could go Keegan as your 4, and those other two guys playing on the wings, and you have Fox out there. It's like, what is your answer for that, right? And the Kings, you can never have too much shooting. The Kings were one of the better shooting teams in the league last season. They had 2 40+% 3-point shooters in Huerter and Keegan, who were so great off of movement. Well, now you're adding Sasha Vezenkov and you're adding Chris Duarte, 2 guys who should slot in and also add additional shooting. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how those guys operate off of Domas.
And then you mentioned Vezenkov. I love Sasha as a basketball player. I think the thing that when I got to ask Chima about him, and Chima played against him overseas, they played each other. Well, Chima didn't play in the game, but he was on the other team in the EuroLeague finals, or I'm sorry, semifinals. Right. So has some familiarity, but the wording that he used that I repeat all the time now is just efficient with his dribbles. Like this guy, and somebody put out a video recently also highlighting this. It's very, like Klay Thompson's the other guy that's really good at this, right? And when you're able to get your looks within the flow of the offense like that, when you're an MVP and being defended like an MVP, then I think that bodes extremely well. Like the 3-point shot where he's shooting over 40% from 3 last year, that's while he is being like guarded the way that Keegan and Kevin were being guarded in the playoffs, and he's still able to do that. So I think offensively, this guy is going to be phenomenal all around. Defensively, figuring out how to make it work is going to be a question. And that's where the concern lies, right? Like if he was somebody that projected to be a plus defender, not great, but plus, then we're talking about a starter in the NBA in my mind. And I don't know we're at that point right now. He just got a 3-year, $20 million deal. We're talking right around 7 a year, 6 point, whatever. That's, I like similar money to Trey Lyles. That's the sort of role that you're paying, expecting of him when you look at that dollar figure. So I think that's reasonable. To me, really the biggest thing in my mind is going to be like, what's the off-court adjustment like for him? Like he was at the Cal Classic the other day. I think he had just got there. And it's like, I'm like, man, this guy looks like kind of like he's just getting his feet set. And then I was like, I wonder what time it is right now in Greece. I was like, it's 6 a.m. And we're just starting like the second game. So like that adjustment going from being a star to now not quite, although I'm sure Sacramento will absolutely embrace him and love him. And just culturally, like it's a culture shock moving to an entirely different country. But the chemistry we've talked about that Sacramento has makes me pretty optimistic about that.
Yeah, it harkens back to those golden era Kings teams where they had so much international flavor, right? Peja, Vlade, Hito, Turkoglu. Those guys obviously looked out for one another, were great to one another. And I think the team at large was just, their chemistry was so great and they got along so well that, you know, they always felt included. Nobody was ever frozen out or anything like that, even if there was a language barrier. I just recently listened to a podcast. It was the Knuckleheads podcast with, I think, Darius Miles and Quentin Richardson that Hito Turkoglu did. It was amazing interview. Hito's hilarious, but he talked about how difficult those first couple of years were. Like, he didn't know how to speak English. You know, he's Turkish. Vlade and Peja are, you know, Serbian, Yugoslavian. A little bit different there. You know, still a language barrier to an extent. And he said that it was kind of a struggle. I think Sasha, his English is, from what I can tell, like at least okay. Like, he can communicate. I'm not sure if he can speak it, but I think I see on his Instagram and his socials, like he can speak English. Hopefully that helps.
He can speak English pretty well from the stuff I've seen.
Okay. So, I mean, I think you lean on the culture that's been built. You lean on the vibes. You lean on how much these guys like one another. I'm pretty confident that they're not going to leave Sasha out of anything. They're going to welcome him with open arms, and he's going to get along with people just fine. The thing that I'm most curious about from a basketball standpoint, though, is he was just the man in Europe. He was not just his league's best player. He was the Euro League's best player. So he plays in the Greek league. Domestically in Greece, he was the best player. In EuroLeague, which encompasses all of Europe and takes the best teams from each European league, he was voted the MVP of the EuroLeague. You know, he was quite literally the best player in Europe. And I think that was a back-to-back, right? Then he was a 2-time EuroLeague MVP, correct?
No, because I think it's back-to-back Greek League MVP, but only one EuroLeague MVP.
Gotcha. I mean, you know, the hype around this guy, very similar to Bogdan Bogdanovic before he came over here, right? Like, and for him to come over on a 3 for 20, Bogey got a 3 for 27. So you're getting the best player in Europe for a cheaper deal than what you got the last best player in Europe for. Obviously, that's awesome. But to your point about how he fits into the team basketball wise, do you think he's going to be okay with not being the man? You know, like, he's going to fill a very specific role. He's going to play plenty. He's too good not to play. But do you think that maybe that'll be a big adjustment as well, as far as him not getting most of the usage and play next to Fox and Domas?
Like, not really, though, to me, because, like, it did revolve around him. He was the guy, right? But it felt very like Keegan at Iowa, you know, where it's like, okay, obviously this is the guy that you're probably going to end up taking the shot most times, but he's not like, I'm sure the usage is up there just because he's the one taking the looks, but like, it's ran through everybody else. And then it just ends up with him. So I don't think so. And I also think that decision was already made. I think that coming over says that he's willing to do that. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm wrong, though, and maybe the thought is he thinks he's going to come over here and eventually be the fucking MVP of this league. And shit, if that works, great. But, you know, there's the Nemanja Bjelica's, and there's the Nicole Lee, whatever it was, Melli's. Mm-hmm. And he's somebody that it just didn't really work. Like, the fit, and I've seen some people, like overseas people, talk about that he didn't get a fair shake. Maybe opportunity wasn't quite right for him, but there's both sides here. So it's going to be interesting. I'm a big fan. I think that offensively he's guaranteed to. I think he's going to be so good. I think, like, I could see a couple 30 balls this year. Not a lot, but like, there are going to be days where he is on. Yep. And extremely smart player, keeps the ball moving. I do think they people are roasting my shirt right now. You're getting roasted. You know, it started with this is a good friend of mine I went to high school with. That started with, if Brenden gets a better shirt, maybe we'll listen to his opinion. First of all, I'll say it doesn't matter what shirt I'm wearing, that guy's never listening to my opinion. But yeah, shout out to Securing the Beam for hopping on here and also roasting me on my shirt.
Securing the Beam's my guy, though, man. We go way back. So he's
whatever. Not my guy, apparently.
We got people that we're going way back with, just absolutely roasting your shirt, man.
And then Matt George is telling me to show my socks on camera again over here. I love live chats. Any other final stuff as we wrap up here, Drew?
Yeah, just to put a bow on the Sasha conversation. Yeah, just you got in this. I guess this will also bridge into Duarte and Colby as well. High feel, high IQ, such incredibly smart players that that if you put them out there in any situation, in any lineup, if you have Domantas Sabonis out there quarterbacking from the high post and running your 3 or 4 foundational sets, these guys are going to slot right in perfectly. And I'm with you with Sasha and his potential to just go off. That's going to happen because we've seen him get hot in the Euro League, a place where the style of play is much different and is much slower and is much more physical. This guy had nights where it was just like, oh, he's just on, and with more freedom of movement for him over here, I just think there's going to be some nights where he's just going to be, it's going to be tough for Mike Brown. Some nights where like he might want to sub him out because he's giving guys like scheduled rest with his rotations. I think there are going to be some nights where he's like, well, I got to keep him out here because if he's out on the court, we're losing a lot tonight because he's just playing so well. I think that's guaranteed. I think there's going to be a handful of 30 balls. There are going to be a lot of nights where he's going for 20 plus, and the lineup and positional versatility that he gives Mike Brown, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Yeah, I'm really, really excited for Sasha. I can't wait to see what he does in a Kings uniform.
And he took number 7. Shout out Mezzi.
But that's what shout out Jimmer Fredette. Shout out Darren Colliston. Shout out Scalabissier for one season. Shout out, who else? Bobby Hurley. Just a lot of.
That's all off the top, huh?
And yeah, a lot of legendary number 7s, dude.
Yeah. I will say that group you mentioned, the other thing they all have in common, they all win a lot of their basketball games. And I think I've talked to you about this. I don't know if I've said this on a pod, but I think I very much come around to thinking that they just love winners. And that sounds like the most basic statement, right?
Yeah.
But think of somebody like Max Lewis who went to Pepperdine. That team sucked. Max I like Max Lewis.
Yeah.
I'm interested for sure. But they're not picking guys like that.
Is Bryant still here? Because Bryant will chime in on this because we're both hardcore West Coast Conference watchers. Yeah, Pepperdine stinks. Lorenzo Romar has had many college coaching jobs. He's been a long-time college coach. Came from Washington before Pepperdine. Coached Brandon Roy at Washington. He's coached some really, really good players in his time. Awesome recruiter. He got Kessler Edwards, Colby Ross, and it wasn't just Max Lewis in his recruiting class. They have 2 other guys, Mike Mitchell and Houston Millette. Those guys are freaking awesome. They're so good. Pepperdine stinks. They can't win. Their last okay teams were with Kessler Edwards. He's intriguing, but they did not win very many games. You're right. And you look at Colby Jones, who with Sean Miller running a pretty advanced offense, and he was a big,
beautiful
facilitator in that offense. One of the best half-court offenses in America last season. Won a ton. Chris Duarte at Oregon won a ton, right? And now
national
you have Sasha,
champion, right?
Or no? Well, Oregon has never won a national title. I'm an Oregon hater because I'm a Cal fan, so I'm glad that's the case. But they were pretty good when he was there. He only played 2 years there too because he was a JUCO transfer. So you add in Sasha, who's obviously won a ton as well. I mean, I think his team only lost one game domestically this year in Greece.
Yes, and to Papagiannis, and that was the game that Sasha got injured.
He got hurt.
Didn't get to close it.
Right. So,
and they barely that team celebrated like they won the whole thing because they beat Olympiacos for the first time in I don't remember how many years, but years.
Yeah, and that was Panathinaikos.
Something like that. Yeah. Derek Williams and Papagiannis.
So they had the Coke machine and Papa G.
and a Antetokounmpo, Alex Antetokounmpo, Kings Summer League legend.
Kings Summer League legend Alex Antetokounmpo. These guys just win.
And you can go back further, like Keegan.
Yeah,
definitely a winner.
Mitchell.
Davion is like the definition.
He's the absolute definition of just an absolute grinder and a dude who just refuses to have anything happen. Like the guy, you watch him play out there. He refuses to be screened. He refuses to let anybody blow by him. And he willed his team to a national title against the juggernaut that everybody thought was going to sleepwalk to the national title that season in Gonzaga. Like the guy's just sensational. Yeah.
Tyrese,
his freshman year, his sophomore year was tricky. He got hurt. And then after he got hurt, that team's season just fell off a cliff. But yeah, his freshman year when he was a more of a role player, they won the Big 12 title. And
I think even like Jamias and Robert Wood or Mississippi State, Texas Tech, those were decent teams.
Mississippi State had a really good season. First really good season in a long time for them when Robert Woodard, that year got shut down, unfortunately. But I think they were going to be a tournament team. And then Nemias. I mean, that team was a Mountain West Conference title contender, and then they got to the NCAA tournament. So yeah, all these guys, Monty's got a type. I think we talk about his types when we're talking about them specifically as players, but I think the bottom line is he just brings in guys that have just won a ton of games, and he's been able to mix them with what he's had in house, and it's been obviously the results have been very positive.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with that is that you don't have to theorize what it looks like at the NBA level with these guys. Like the context is already there. You see like Kobe Jones doesn't have to come into the NBA and play a different role. He's going to come into the NBA and do the exact same thing he did at Xavier. That's what they're going to ask from him. Like Max Lewis would have been something totally different. And that's where I'm curious. Like the whole liking winners is very obvious, right? But it's I don't know what that means for the other side, so be interesting. But I very much come around to, I think they just love people that win their basketball games. And I like covering a team that wins its basketball games, and the Kings did that. So they're in a good spot. I'm with you. I don't think running it back's a bad thing. I get the want for them to do more, but there's optimism for internal improvement. Keegan's the obvious one, but literally fucking Matt, don't you dare wear that shirt out tonight in Vegas. I've already been wearing this out in Vegas. Matt, I got compliments, by the way, you jerks.
Matt was roasting you for stuff outside of the shirt too. He didn't even start with the shirt.
I know, Matt. It's on site with Matt, dude. It's on site. I love Matt George.
Yeah, man, shout out to Matt.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else, Drew.
I'll just say this. I'm happy for you and all of our other buddies who cover the team, because James said this. James Ham would say this all the time on the Kings beat. Like, if the team starts winning, it'll be fun for me covering the team. And I think that's a universal sentiment that everybody in media shares. Like everybody who covers the team who I know, like you guys all seem to have so much fun this past season. And it's summertime, the season's over, we're still having fun. So it's just good to see. The vibes are good around here. The comments are just they've gone off the rails here, man.
I don't know if Scavenger Man in the chat is Emilios, my good friend again. I don't know if he knows where I'm staying, or if he totally just made this up and got it right, I would never hear the end of this. But the comment for the audio side says, with a shirt like that, I bet you're staying at the Rio. By the way, anyone on the audio side, since apparently people want to see my fucking shirt, there's the YouTube as well that I always forget to mention. That's all we're going to do. And I'm going to wear this shirt out in Vegas right now. Assholes. Pretty funny. Yeah, that's all I got, Drew. I'm excited for some of these Kings next games. I want to continue to see more from some of these guys. It's an interesting battle, like you've said, for that final two-way spot. Still 2 roster spots that are TBD, that needs to be still figured out, but there is time to do that. I think there is a good energy around this team that is still carrying over from last year. I guess final thing I'll say is that that changes really fast, though. Yeah. I have some buddies that cover the Timberwolves, I remember being here a year prior and being like, yeah, I'm just hoping that the Kings have a year like Minnesota. And then now they're sitting here and being like, I hope Minnesota has a year like Sacramento did. And it changes really fast. Now, I'm not saying they're going to go trade 5 first-round picks for a guy that no other team in the league thinks is worth 5 first-round picks, but it changes fast.
Oh, yeah.
This like feel-good story that was last year breaking the drought, that shit's gone. There's like high expectations now.
Oh, yeah.
And there's going to be a very, very different feeling to next year because of that. Like, they're probably not going to be the 3 seed, guys. And I think that's going to annoy a lot of fans. Like, but I don't know that they were really like 3 seed caliber, typical 3 seed caliber team last year. They were really good, but like a 3 seed's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's not, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this year goes. It's going to be a different feeling. There's more expectations. Shit changes fast. There's good energy. I think there's like whatever basic, but good vibes in the air around all this. Right.
Yeah.
But it changes fast. So got to keep the good momentum rolling. And hopefully they will be able to do that. And maybe that'll mean some of these pieces. Maybe Jordan Ford is someone that we're talking about in the future here. Chess prodigy, by the way, which was a cool story from Joe Davidson and Sacramento Bee. But that's all I got. I'm going to get out of here and let the world see this beautiful shirt. And definitely people should also check out the King's Herald, as always, for the work there from myself and all the other great guys and gals. And you can take a look at their Patreon. We talk about Figs' merch. I'm a big fan of some of the King's Herald merch, too. Have a handful throughout the years. But take a look at their Patreon also to support local independent Kings coverage. Get you a little discount on some of that merch. And if you enjoyed this episode of the King's Pulse podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. And you'll hear from me again in the next couple days.